So why do I make these videos? What are these videos about? So this is assuming that you aren't interested in all of the keywords that I use to help people find these videos, people who are interested in these subjects. Um, but just explaining as if somebody just came across this channel randomly what the heck it's about. So basically, I'm someone who suffered a lot in my life and thought and believed a lot of things about myself that I have since found to be completely untrue and have found to be the root of that suffering. So, what I have found is that every thought I think is directly felt by me. And this is sort of the creation of emotions that are responding to my thoughts. And so when I suffer, what this means is I'm thinking a thought about a separate self. And in religion, you could even use the term sin to describe this. It's like we've left God and we've gone off on our own. And we are great individual, unique, beautiful expressions of the whole, yet we're never actually separate. And the sort of place of home to this, the sort of where you know it to be true for yourself, is best pointed to, in my opinion, by saying now or awareness. So when we are utterly present, when a sound occurs that we've never heard before, and we stop and we listen completely, that complete openness, that complete presence, that's what we really are. And in that moment when we're listening, truly listening or truly seeing, or the senses sort of dissolve because we can't experience them separately. That is what we really are. And sometimes people call themselves sensitive, and that is utter sensitivity. And yet also what you realize is that when you suffer, and when you suffer easily, it's not necessarily a sensitivity, but it's just an indicator that you are thinking something or seeing something, interpreting something, believing something in a light that is other than where we want to go or what we truly are now. So I use the word creating a lot, and it seems as if we have this trajectory in life where we are excited about our future and we want our future to turn out good for us and we want the things we want. But when we believe that we can only feel good in the having of those things in the future, it feels very bad. And this is what creates a lot of thoughts that try to secure and to get and to grasp. And this can be completely exhausting and result in burnout, and can result in cycles of giving up and cycles of trying to force through. And what we find is that things come to us so easily when we realize that the reason that we want anything is because we believe that we will feel good in the having of it. However, the only indicator that we are creating or thinking or envisioning something that will truly bring us joy is if we are feeling that joy right now. And so often we have big dreams that we doubt. And then it feels bad, and it feels bad to focus on them. And this is where, if you consider a small dream, you start to see the difference in having resistance between things. So if I have this inspiration to go for a hike somewhere later in the afternoon, there aren't a lot of thoughts, and there isn't a lot of time for thoughts to come up that say that I can't do that, or say why I can't do that. Now, if I'm feeling bad that day, that very well might be the case. It might happen that fast. But if I get the inspiration, yes, this is something I want to do, I go ahead and I do it. It happens so quickly. There's no resistant thought. And so what we realize is there is no difference between having a huge, enormous dream or wanting something so big that it seems impossible or out of our control of what we can make happen for us, or something that simple and easy and straightforward to the steps of getting what we want. There is no difference. There is only beliefs about whether or not we can have it, and beliefs that are standing in our way. So the belief of what we believe that we are is the main one here. So we believe that we are actually material things, and religion and spirituality challenges this, and yet it doesn't really, so often, it doesn't get to the seemingly radical realization that we are not material. We are not actually objects that move around in the world and go and obtain the things that we want, but that we are, just in the same case as hearing a sound and being purely open to listening to it, we are purely open, and purely receiving everything. And how we know what we're receiving and how open we are to things and how wide of a lens, so to speak, we see clearly the circumstances and the people and what's happening around us, is by how we feel. Because feeling is that tie to the present moment, to what we really are, to awareness. We cannot think feeling. We cannot truly feel and leave the present, leave what we really are. And so when we know this and we start to pay attention to this, we start to examine thoughts that come up that feel really bad. So if what we may have previously thought of as compassion, so if we see somebody in a bad accident or something like that, we may have feelings arise of fear ourself, or horror, or certain things. This is not openness. This is not love. Or we may see somebody that we're a bit jealous of. It may be a family member who has greater success in business than we do, and we're feeling closed off. All of these feelings are completely legitimate because we aren't the feelings. We are feeling ever present now itself. And so when we listen to this and we come home to this and we realize and we take this guidance of feeling and we go towards what feels better, and we go towards that feeling itself, everything transforms and everything changes to the degree of which the discord that we were thinking before. And this has a alchemy or a transmutation behind it, where it seems as if when we are very, very hungry, food tastes the very best. When we are very, very thirsty, we never appreciate water as we do then. And so that's all this is for those who are suffering. When you start to turn towards that feeling itself and you realize that it was always there, it was always all it ever was made up of, the world opens up to you. And relationships and people you start to see your own love reflected by everything, as if the world turns into this giant mirror of light and beauty. And it is so rewarding. That you no longer care so much about being rewarded in any other way, because you know it's a complete given. What happens is basically the boundaries that we believed constituted or defined us start to dissolve. And so all kinds of tensions of believing and thinking ourselves to be a separate self, and believing that we need to feel bad in order to be safe, in order to be okay in the future, those dissolve and are let go of. And this can look very, very messy. It can look like going for a drive, looking at the sky, and having certain insights or clarifications of ways that patterns that we used to think, and then patterns sort of being revised or being newly created, and just releasing these long-held tensions. And sometimes this looks like bawling your eyes out, and lots of experiences of like tears of joy, and just astoundment, revelation, insight, all kinds of things come in. But we do not have to strive for these things. These things come to us of our own accord. And yet we are still allowed to desire. We are still allowed to want. And we realize that this is sacred in itself, but we realize how direct it is, in that there's great contentment in wanting to want. And realizing that wanting is creating. So an artist who is totally inspired and in the flow state of his painting, the painting that he envisions has not become, but he does not care. This is his all. This is everything. That presence, that flow state, that in the moment starts to envelop, starts to take over your life. And there's a sense of humbleness or humility in dropping those thoughts and realizing that our perspective and trying to hold on to that isn't what we want anymore. That we do want this, that we what religion, the idea of purity pointed to, was that feeling like after you've had a really good cry, or you've said something that you really, really wanted to say but didn't get a chance to, that like purity and that openness is what we really are to begin with anyway. And there are just thoughts that seem to cloud this. And so meditation is a big piece of this, because meditation is when we allow ourselves that time to tap into feeling itself. And by feeling itself, I mean we are not a feeling. We can describe how we're feeling, and this can be very helpful to see what emotions that we are experiencing, and what emotions our thoughts are being filtered through. But feeling itself, we can only ever feel now directly. And so many of our thoughts that cause suffering are actually avoiding this direct suffering, and yet they're what perpetuates it. And so what a gift to realize this. And another thing that's said in religion is the good news. In Christianity, the good news is that with this they say that with this belief that you will not die, but that you will have eternal life. And we realize that we don't have to wait for bliss. We don't have to wait for heaven. That is the very stuff we are made of. That is the very now. That is eternal itself. That we have never, ever experienced the past or future outside a thought about it occurring now. That feeling is aware of now. That we are already eternal without having to think a thought, believe a thought, continue to think a thought, anything. And we realize the nature of thought, and we realize that we are not that. We realize that what we believed ourselves to be was a thought, that our name is arbitrary, that our form is arbitrary, and that all there is to our form directly is what we perceive, what we feel. That's our true identity. So the peace that passeth understanding, and our attempts to understand, fall short. And yet, what does understanding really point to? If you look up the etymology of understanding, it becomes this funny sort of strange loop. We don't really have a origin of the idea of understanding. We have never really understood understanding because nothing is standing under it, and nothing is keeping us from it, because it is intimately us. The only knowing of this moment, the only knowing of the pixels on the screen, or the vibrations of the voice, or the meaning of these words is you, is utterly, intimately you, and utterly now.